Welcome back to the Unanimous Decision Podcast. I am your host, DPalm. Follow me on Twitter at DPalm66. You can follow the show on Twitter at UDPod. And if you're going to talk about the show on social media, do me a huge favor. Use the hashtag UDPod so we can make sure we find you. Thank you for the shout out. And maybe if you got points or you want questions you want to ask on the air, things you want to talk about, we can find them that way. Get content for the show because again, Summer Desert, we need the content. We're of course brought to you by the NTR Network, ntrnetwork.net. It's got everything you need. Very unique voices in the realms of television, movie reviews, video games. We've got all of our TV reviews are in off season right now, but we're coming back very strong in the fall. Flash, Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, and Arrow on the Super Tuesday feed. Got more character corners rolling out in August. It's going to be very busy on the main feed, but if you like all that stuff, make sure you check out our premium feed. It's only $8 a month, and it gives you access to over 300 extra podcasts. Same attitudes, same personalities, but talking about a wider range. Hell No Cupid is worth a subscription in and of itself. Hearing Chris talk about dating relationships is worth the price of admission, and then you get everything else on top of that. Another way you can help out the show is to make sure you leave a 5-star review in the iTunes store. I know you subscribe. That's how I know you're getting the show. I'm not even going to say that right now. Just make sure once you subscribe, leave that 5-star. You got a comment, you can leave a comment. We'll read it on the air. If it's nice, I'll read it. If it's mean, I'll also read it. Eventually, I'll have to put a cap on how many mean things I read about myself, just for my own personal mental health. But right now, we're not that deep into it. So hey, if you got mean things to say, I can read them on the air, and I'll just cry my way through it. You can email the show at udpodcast@gmail.com. If you have anything else you want to say, make sure you're utilizing the Amazon affiliate link through the Internet Network homepage. If you're doing all your shopping Amazon, as you should, it's just smart, it's convenient. People say there's a markup. It's worth it for me not to have to go do these things. Jeff Bezos gets his cut. If you use our affiliate link, we get our cut too. Help us go to cons. Help us cover more things. All the San Diego coverage is coming out. It's going to be amazing. I'm still super jealous I didn't get to go. And we're going to move on before I start weeping openly on the air. Lastly, check out the store. MTR Network has its own store now. You can get all your favorite shirts. The Blame D Palm shirt is coming, I've been told. And you can also get things like a really nice coffee mug that I'm drinking, let's just call it water, out of right now. That is all the preamble I have. Let's get right to it. We got a guest today who's no stranger to the show. The newly minted host of PWTorch's Deep Dive podcast, live on Saturdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. We've got Rich Fann. What up, man?
Not much, Palm. Not much. Enjoying a fine Sunday. Getting ready to partake in eventually my son's pre-kindergarten graduation and kind of figuring out what the heck's going on from there.
Yeah, we were talking about it before we recorded, kind of the not the traditional the participation trophy culture complaints that we had. Just we were just having a conversation about that. But you know what I also realized? I would like to get recognized for more of the things that I do. In my day-to-day life, I do some. I feel like you and I, but we're some hard workers on multiple levels, and recognition must be nice.
Oh yeah.
But I think your recognitions come in the launching of this new show, man. Tell the listeners about the new show. Tell us kind of the format, what you're covering, and how they can find it.
Sure. If you go to PWTorch Livecast, alloneword.com, it'll have up the weekly schedule. I'm on Saturday, 6 Eastern, usually for an hour, might go a little longer depending on the subject matter. And I'm a person by nature that overthinks things, and I don't think I'm alone in that. So I decided, with the benefit of editor-publisher Wade Keller, that it would be a great time with Wade moving to Podcast One, since he had to come up from Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was looking for people. He approached me about a show, and that's what I wanted to make my show on. So each week, instead of talking about maybe, the week's events, we're talking about things in depth. So first two shows so far have been history of the G1 Climax in New Japan Pro Wrestling and why it's important. And last night we did a show on Progress Wrestling in the United Kingdom and why you should be watching it. And then next week, I will be having the esteemed Palm on to talk about one of my favorite wrestlers that is era proof. That is Mr. Big Cat Ernie Ladd, who not only organized the AFL All-Star Game strike because New Orleans had racist policies on the docket still after the Civil Rights Act had just been written, but then he went into pro wrestling and changed the game, saying things that most people would be thrown in jail for, but somehow got people to show up in arenas and fill them. So that's going to be a really cool show. And you could always reach it, like I said, on PWTorchLivecast.com, or hit me on Twitter at Rich_Fann, Fann.
I'll tell you what, man, you are in a place where rampant overthinking of things that seem trivial is very welcomed, and almost, I kind of want to make that the subtitle of the show now. Deep Thoughts That No One Asked For by Deep Palm. But yeah, I'm really excited. Be on next week. It's going to be a great time. Everybody should check it out. It's going to be live, like you said, 6 p.m. next Saturday. I'm also going to be doing the Insanity Check, our flagship show right before that. I don't think that'll be live this week, but yeah, so I will be talking a lot about a lot of things. I'm very excited to do so. But today, all right, so you guys may have noticed when I bring Rich on, we always talk in wrestling, we're talking combat sports, and today I was so excited because I had so much other stuff to talk about. But then last night happened, and I was reminded that, oh, Rich, you showed up. We got to talk a little combat sports, brother. And Jon Jones, I think you may have retired Daniel Cormier. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
For those of you who didn't see the fight last night, Daniel Cormier took on Jon Jones, defending his light heavyweight championship. And it did not go well for Cormier. He came out fairly strong with a big burst early, lost some of that steam in the middle of the first, and then it settled into a battle of Jon Jones's range and Cormier's ability to cut it off. And it was very interesting because I thought Cormier was better on his feet this time than he was in the first fight. But it also spoke to the intelligence of Jones because he was throwing a lot of low right kicks all night, and the kick that finished Cormier was that high left. And he went right through his head. And, yeah, it's a wrap for Cormier.
Yeah, I was watching, and I can't remember who the co-host was with Rogan. And he was talking during the Maia fight about how much that fighter needed to throw a high kick at some point.
Right.
And he threw a very weak one toward the end. I think it was like right before he tried his flurry of failed takedown attempt.
Flurry, yeah.
Yeah, he was like, "Dear Jesus, take the wheel," and he just kept throwing his body, and it just did nothing.
They got so much worse over time. It was really sad.
It was. I mean, oh man, it was just so. He was bleeding from his legs, and it was because he wouldn't commit to the leg shots, and it was just so sad. So when you looked at a coaching staff done right, and anytime someone has Jackson as a coach, I am afraid for the other person's life because they're going to take you apart systematically. And this isn't like Rocky 2 where you're going to have Bones Jones look back at the camp and say, no tricks, and then you just keep with the leg kicks for the rest of the night. They said it, he did it, and I felt bad for DC because it wasn't just the head kick, but the head kick and then the leg kick that tripped him, and he just started staggering around.
The drunk spin was bad.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I joked after the fight, like part of me thought he was fighting to get out of the octagon because he thought he had a fight to get to.
After he took that kick and I saw that spin, I was like, he doesn't know where he is.
No.
He has no idea why this guy's chasing him and trying to hit him in the face. And you're right. It was one of those things where it was slow and methodical until it wasn't.
Right.
And it kind of proves to me once again that Jon Jones is a terrifying fighter, a genius in the octagon, and just my hat, tip of the cap to him right now. There's nothing else I can say. What do you think this means as far as Jon Jones' legacy? The last fight they had was January 2015, I believe. And since that point, it's been missteps after false starts. And the entire time, Daniel Cormier was talking. Daniel Cormier was telling us how bad he was going to beat Jon Jones, how he didn't deserve to be a champion. You saw during the fight, he would try to taunt Jones, and Jones did. Some would say a face turn, some would say a deep heel turn. And after the fight, praised Cormier's reputation as a family man, said that he's a great fighter, and he's pushed me because that's what a rival does. And Cormier came afterwards, being interviewed after being unconscious, which you shouldn't do. But he did drop that reel as it's not a rivalry. He beat me twice.
Yeah.
What does this say? What does this do for the image or maybe the perception of Jon Jones?
Well, Jones comes out smelling like a rose, especially we'll get to what he said after he finished his delightful quote unquote face turn. But I think when Cormier has his wits about him, and I mean this like with complete respect, he's going to listen to that tape And I know we usually talk about the other combat sport, the more theatrical side, but this is perfect. This is Triple H somehow convincing the Undertaker it'd be a good storyline that he spent the last year staring at footage from their last match at WrestleMania and demands a rematch, even though he lost the match or won the match. That's what Cormier is going to be doing. He lost twice. He's going to be looking at film. He's going to be looking at this interview and just replaying each word of the interview. He's a family man. Go home to your family and retire. He's a family man. Go home to your family and retire. It's like, you know what? I think I want a third fight. And God help him.
But the question now becomes, and I think this actually speaks to the larger health or lack thereof of the UFC, why would Jones ever do that again? He has nothing to gain from fighting him. And you've done a very, you know what, this we call in the business a great segue, because you've led me right into my next point. The rumor, and of course egged on by Jones's mathematically incorrect comments after the fight, the rumored fight now is the Brock Lesnar-Jon Jones. And in an environment where we've seen Colin, we're seeing, what's his name? McGregor.
Yeah.
Taking his wares outside the UFC for a bigger payday. You see the opportunity for a super fight with Jon Jones. It looks like the stars are outgrowing the UFC because of the structure they put in place. Like, I don't think Conor McGregor ever sets foot in an octagon again.
No.
I don't think there's anything. When he gets his head beat in, he will never. Why would he ever set foot in an octagon again? He is set for life.
Yeah,
Jon Jones can pull off a Brock Lesnar fight. He will never step foot in an octagon again.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think I'm going to have you on for a deep. I mean, you're going to be a regular guest, but there's going to be a week where I'm talking the week of the McGregor fight. I'm going to talk about race in combat sports, Jack Johnson, the Great White Hope, and
so we'll set aside 4 hours for that one. That'll be good.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm going to do it in parts. So I'm going to do one
good.
with my buddy Chris. I'm going to do one part with you because I really think that the new exit strategy for fighters in combat sports is to find your Great White Hope to beat or be the Great White Hope and then get your retirement package. Because that's really what Jones do.
You're right, because what Jones did last night was the beginning of the I'm now immediately acceptable again.
Yep.
He plays that card. He plays that. If he can stay this lane through a Brock Lesnar fight, the world is oyster, man. He's 30 years old.
Mm-hmm. And look at the list of people.
Whatever he wants to do after this is, guess what? And I know, again, going back to the other combat sport, a bit more theatrical, the man who gave you the modern day blueprint is Dwayne Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's about to age out of that shit. Somebody's taking place. McGregor, Jones. Look,
I mean,
man,
Vince would fall over like in that animated GIF of him looking at at Stacy Keibler. If Jon Jones says, "I'm 30, I've beaten most of my major competition in UFC, I've beaten Brock Lesnar. What's up?"
If he beats Brock Lesnar, it's a word. Let's do this right now, okay? Let's just have this conversation right now. Jones had the, again, mathematically incorrect comment of, if you want to see what it's like getting beat in an octagon by someone 40 pounds lighter than you, meet me here. Jones, I can't imagine a world where he's only got 40 pounds on Jones.
I was going to say, even at walking around weight, he still has 60 probably on him.
Oh, and if they're both cutting the fight, it's still 60.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, sure, man. I don't want this fight to happen. I'm not a big catchweight kind of guy. I'm not an old school UFC. We'll just see these two people. There are weight classes for a reason.
Yeah.
And there's a world between these two. Do you see, if this fight were to happen, would you give Jones a puncher's chance?
I would, just because we've all seen, just like we saw DC face, we've seen a lot of Brock face. He does not like getting hit.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest question with Brock is how badly ravaged he still is from the diverticulitis that took him out the first time.
Right.
I think that healthy whole Brock would be a different, scarier story for Jon Jones.
Yes.
I think this Brock, as old as he is, he's never seen anything like Jon Jones before. Then again, Jon Jones has never seen anything like Brock Lesnar.
The only way I would give him, I'll give him a puncher's chance, but I'm probably going to give him a little bit more because of my appreciation of Mr. Jackson and the camps and the training that he puts his people through as far as preparing for a fight. So whatever weaknesses Brock has, Jon will be.
Oh no, it'd be a fight for the ages. And I honestly think that Jones could win it. I say puncher's chance kind of tongue in cheek. but I don't want it to happen. Like objectively, like stepping back from like rabid, like interesting fanhood and fantasy booking Jon Jones in a WrestleMania main event. I can't see it. I don't want to see it happen.
If anything, I want them to hose Dana and work it completely. I want this to be like a Battle Arts type situation where they get in the ring,
Oh my god, I
they
hadn't even thought about that.
they
Oh.
dance, and then Paul throws him a chair from outside, and it's bedlam.
You know what I would do? I would have. Okay, I told you we were talking about wrestling this time, but
It's okay.
the way I would book it is I would have Brock accept the challenge, but say it's got to happen on my turf.
Yes.
And we get a work shoot a fight match. We should get a match. Let's let them work a fucking match.
Mm-hmm.
And of course Jones goes over.
Of course.
But then he never goes back to UFC.
Yeah. This is where Dana has to realize him. That's why I was very surprised after the semi-main that he was so derisive of his champion. He's like, who wants to see that crap again? People were booing. It's like, well, if you put him up against two grapplers, two title defenses in a row, and he has to spend his entire camp with takedown defense, of course he's not going to be able to try to knock guys out. He's trying to get his title.
You've created the styles make fights, and you made this fight, which was a bad decision. So that's on booking more than anything else, or I guess rankings, or however you want to look at it. Let's move on from the fight game and head back to some of the other things that have stolen summer away from baseball once again. We go back to the NBA. So earlier this week, I recorded a podcast where I talked about Kyrie Irving's desire to leave Cleveland. I made it logical and understandable. Sometimes you outgrow a place, you want to try to spread your wings, see what you can do. I saw it as a positive. And I thought the reports that maybe it's personal were always overblown. And I woke up today, and now I got Steph on Instagram making fun of LeBron at a wedding. And I got Kyrie not just watching, not just laughing, but like editing on the fly. No, your elbow's a little low. Make sure his is higher when he does that stupid shit. What is going on here?
This man is trying to... Again, everything is pro wrestling, so this man's trying to get a bounty put on his head. You took the game-winning shot that won Cleveland a world title with LeBron James as the architect of your dreams, and you're spitting in this man's face, and I don't get it. I know he wants to be an alpha. I know that his dad told him he wants to be an alpha, which makes you're not an alpha if your dad says you have to be an alpha. That's the rules. Look, man, and don't think I'm Mr. like walk around punching people in the face everywhere, but like when it comes down to championships, when it comes down to any competitive sport, if you have to pretend to be something you're not going to succeed at being you. So I need Kyrie to either this is him and embrace it, because I don't want to hear I was hacked. I don't want to hear I didn't know this was being videotaped. I don't want to hear any excuse. Own it. Answer your phone when Cleveland calls, since he's been ducking their calls for about a week, and let's just get this sorted.
Yeah, I was about to say that it's even weirder because you said like I want to have him own it or be a man about it, but he's chosen again to do nothing, to say nothing. And my entire stance has always been if you couldn't get to early, you can go to camp with him. I think he's poisoning that well, and if he really wants out, he's got to shut the fuck up, right?
Yeah.
If you really want to go, you got to shut the fuck up so we can get you gone. But we used to create a situation where no one's going anywhere, and it's going to be a very, very, very awkward camp.
Well, what I need to see is, and this is where you kind of realize, again, this is where the power lies, brother. I want to see for the first time in NBA basketball history, did not play LeBron's decision for about 40 games.
Yo.
It's like, why Kyrie on the bench? Check with LeBron.
Yo, I could see LeBron doing that and then not saying his name in the media.
Nope.
Why didn't Kyrie play? Who? Oh, him? He ain't playing today.
Yeah, he's like, it's real tough. It's like, LeBron, that was a tough game, man. Tough game. What's going on? It's like, well, when you're point guard down, we got to just how to come together as a team. The guys are doing what they can, but ultimately we're going to come out of this as champions because we stayed together. It's like, what about Kyrie? Who? What?
Oh, you mean old dude? He's become dude. Like that's Kyrie is quickly turned, and it's not even like. And I think LeBron threw him almost like an olive branch. Like, No, none of this is true. Me and Kyrie are cool. All Kyrie had to do was continue to say nothing. And now here we are. Speaking of life approaching you fast.
Yeah.
The Summer of Hugh continues. Cold summer running on. So now, as always, what happens in this case, you get ardent defenders, and then you get new news. Because generally what happens in the years past is because of need of access or need of relationships or financial or otherwise, certain stories about people get tamped down or underreported or unfollowed up upon because really what's the good narrative to destroy a public figure that is by seen as so many as a beacon of the community? That was Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze was not just the football coach who brought Ole Miss to heights of likes of which they had never seen. People say, oh, they brought him back to greatness. Then you don't know Ole Miss football. Greatness, it doesn't exist on that campus. And let's be frank, it didn't exist while Freeze was there either, but he got them the closest they've ever been. He made them more than respectable. He made Oxford a destination. The question is to how as the beginnings of the NCAA investigations. Now we get to the questions of, wait, who is the man who actually did this? Is he this? And I'm not saying that you can't be one and or the other or both. I'm just saying when you present yourself as one way and the truth is so diametrically opposed to it, the questions have to get asked and the jokes kind of have to fly. So was he the Bible-thumping man of the people coach who just brought out the beauty in Oxford, or was he a coach of any other willing to do what it takes to win and to advance, and who maybe had a problem controlling his not fucking hookers? I don't know what to say. It's weird because now we're getting stories of his behavior when he was working in high schools. Like there's these things coming out, and of course you've got the people who say I played for Coach Freeze and that would never happen, and those people will end up in a Penn State-esque 30 for 30 in a couple of years. But you get more and more people saying, wait, who is this person that we think we support? Is this kind of just who we are in 2017, Rich? Is it that dangerous to have heroes, or is it just kind of we've got to roll with information as it comes?
I think I joked on my first episode of the Deep Dive because I wanted to kind of thank everyone. I was like, hey, I also want to thank God because I'm a Christian, but I'm not a Hugh Freeze Christian, so you won't catch me in that. But and that's where it is. I think the biggest issue is not that he had his faith out there, because I think people have done it in other ways. Like Tony Dungy, for instance, never really did it, at least in the beginning. Toward the end, when he was doing Focus on the Family and all that other stuff, it got problematic. But when you're a coach and you're leading young men and you decide to put Bible verses in your Twitter feed and thank God this wasn't Dabo, because Dabo would have been a dead man. Because as bad as Hugh Freeze is getting it, Dabo Sweeney said the reason that black people are getting abused by police is that it's a sin problem. And when we focus on sin, we don't have to worry about everything else. And I have never laughed harder in my life than when I saw him.
He's still employed, man.
He won a national championship.
Fuck. Anyway.
Yeah, so Hugh, I believe all of it, and I also believe he has faith. But here's the thing. My question always is when you put it out there that much, and again, I know we try to do it, but I think of Jake the Snake in 96. That was what tuned me up to what you got to say in the streets for what you say at home. When Jake the Snake came back to WWE and he was putting the scriptures out, he was smoking more crack, snorting more coke than he ever had in his life.
Right.
So sometimes people fall in love with the gimmick and they forget that there's a man behind it. And I think in Hugh Freeze's case, that was the deal. And when you're in high school, and we also don't think about or talk about enough the fact that this man came to prominence because Providence, no pun intended, because of The Blind Side.
Mike Lower, who we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
It's wild because there's a USCA report came out yesterday that 3 women who were students at the Briarcrest Christian School in Memphis in the late 90s described to USA Today how Freeze made them feel uncomfortable with his inappropriate behavior. And it's so wild. Like you look at the Freeze story, and the long view is it's the story you think it's too crazy to be true. Didn't play a down of college football his entire life. Ended up coaching high school girls basketball for over 10 years, goes to the football team, wins 2 state titles, and then finds his way moving upwards, climbing the ranks until he ends up the head coach at Ole Miss. And the legend grows with him, and it's always the ones who get canonized on the journey up that I worry about. That I'm like, hey man, are we getting the fullest picture? Because what happens is it distorts the reporting on these people. Right. If I go into it wanting to like you or wanting to have that confirmation bias, the things that I see that would fly in the face of that, they easily get turned a blind eye to.
Right. And this is, you see this in every walk of life. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are big Bernie supporters. And when I would ask them questions about, hey, why is Bernie saying now's the time to stop focusing on identity politics, or he's hugging John McCain, or it's like, he's just because if you were to see any of this other stuff, you'd call someone a Clintonista and call it a day. It's like, you got to call a spade, and I would respect you more, because this blatant defense of someone, the more you canonize them, the more likely it is I now need to see where their dirt is.
Now, speaking of dirt, here's something that's been kicked up in the face of the Hugh Freeze situation. It's another subtle reminder that the NCAA transfer policy, is draconian and makes little to no sense. Not just because of the coach leaving due to morality clause reasons. The question now is, as the NCAA's case alleges 12 total and 15 level 1 allegations, the very most severe type, against the school, what onus is it on the kids to stay? And why are we barring them from doing the same thing? Hugh Freeze is not going to be broke and destitute and wondering where his next meal is coming from. Hugh Freeze will lay low until probably bowl season, land a television talking gig during the bowl breakdown. He'll probably cover draft lead up and do a lot of pregame stuff for the next season. He'll take this fall off. We'll see him on television this winter, and it won't get mentioned. Meanwhile, a Shea Patterson, who's very talented quarterback at Ole Miss, do you stay and risk never playing in a postseason? Or do you say, hey, I want to leave. Oh, I better just burn this 1 year of eligibility while I do so?
Yeah, and it's amazing to me that it took controversy to the level of Penn State for them to say, okay, you guys have a one-time out. Use it or lose it. That shouldn't be the case, because you don't do that with coaches. Like, I can't stand the transfer policy because of that reason. I'm a big fan of seeing guys have the same mobility that their counterparts would, because ultimately you're not going to be able to do this when they go to the NFL, because then they're going to be locked into a rookie contract. So this is these 4 years are the last 4 years they should have any chance at making these choices outside of their first free agency opportunity.
If they get that far.
Right.
I've always said, when people say, oh, these recruits, a recruit should enjoy every second of it, because you're right. From the second you make a decision where to go to college, your life is not your own until the first free agency, maybe. You get to pick where you're drafted.
Right.
So, yeah, I think you're right. I think that hopefully this will louden the cries for the NCAA to get right with themselves, because in a world where you're not penalizing coaches for literally breaking the law using state funds, but telling the kids that, oh, I know he left, I know it's the reason we came here, but sorry, you got an agreement with us that we can only renew annually, but part of the buyout of that agreement is you can't leave. Maybe someone would say, a cynic would say, they're getting him ready for the inequity of both everyday life and of NFL contracts, but maybe I'm not that cynical. Someone who I think is even a little less cynical, Major League Baseball. And this is telling you again how long it took, what it would take for baseball to crack this show on July 30th. The answer is voting in suspected PED users. That's right. MLB announced their latest class to go to Cooperstown, and while some of the bigger names who deserve to be in still aren't, Barry Bonds, oh my God, are you kidding me? This is getting goddamn ridiculous. 2 names did get in who've been not plagued, but maybe haunted by the whispers of PED use. Again, like Mr. Bonds, there have been no firm proof of use. Jeff Bagwell and Pudge Rodriguez both made it in this year. Jeff Bagwell, I believe, on his 7th ballot. Pudge on his 1st. Do you think this is a more realistic take on how we should look at PEDs and how maybe the baseball Illuminati maybe are being a bit more understanding, or maybe even not even accepting, but just kind of acknowledging and moving on, as opposed to saying, let's have this incomplete picture of our game.
I think one of the pieces to this is the media likability of the fellows that are under investigation. So when you look at a guy like Pudge, it's Pudge. Everybody likes Pudge. It's Barry
Let's
Bonds.
just call him Pudge.
Right. When it's Barry Bonds, it's like, oh no, this guy is the devil. So I think that a lot of it's made of that. And I think also there's a little bit of that punishment clause. So like if you have media, if you like by the media, but they think it's too egregious, they'll have you sit out a couple of ballots. If you're liked, and it's like, we can't really prove it, but we all kind of know. 2 seems to be the magic number, but you wouldn't be a first ballot. So I think they're going to make these arguments with themselves to allow these guys in going forward. But I also think, looking at, like, I'm not a baseball fan, but looking at the current baseball scene, it's amazing to me that they're doing whatever they can through stadia, through balls and whatever to get home runs. And they're getting home runs, but no one cares anymore because you demonized home runs when you wanted to be better than the player that was your best home run hitter because he didn't care about any of your norms. And so that's just, it's very interesting to me, this whole dynamic.
It is. I think you can hit the nail on the head there. You look at Bagwell's road to Cooperstown, 41% on the first ballot. It takes 75% to get in. He lived in the 50s for 5 years and then hit 86% this year. And Pudge, while he wasn't as high, I think if you look at his numbers in a vacuum, he probably should have had a higher percentage getting in. But he got in on the first ballot. I think that the attitudes are coming around. I think that younger voters are getting a vote. I think that it's hopefully going to just I need Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, and Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame. And Roger Clemens. Like, I need them in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's the 4 horsemen of Major League Baseball right there.
That's it. Get these guys in, and let's talk about the rest. Like I know things happen in drips and drabs, but it's time. You made your point. You think drugs are bad. We fucking get it. Let's get an accurate representation of the game in there. NFL's rolling around. Sorry, baseball. I gave you one chance in it in July, and you blew it. Football's back. Camps have opened. Hope springs eternal everywhere. Not here because I'm a Falcons fan and hope is dead in this house. I got to ask, Rich, you're a Bills fan. Hope should be dead in yours, but it never seems to be. Give me a snapshot on what you think is going to happen with the Bills this year.
I think they're going to go somewhere between 4-12 and 7-9. And depending on what happens with the Chiefs, that'll them to probably 2 top 15 picks and maybe a top 15 and a top 25, because I don't think I think the Chiefs are in a dry, instead of dry snitch, they're in a dry tank. They're trying to keep it on the low. They're getting rid of the best receiver, draft first-round quarterback. And it's like, no, Alex, baby, we're fine. It's like, oh, by the way, we're probably going to make Tamba Hali feel alienated and not give him enough snaps and not pay this guy either. But it's okay. It's all fine. We're going back to the playoffs, baby. So I think they're gonna be pretty terrible to mediocre, and then the question's gonna be how much of the blame will be thrown at Tyrod Taylor, because that's kind of what Western New York does when it comes to a black person in charge. And from there, they'll probably try to draft one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks that come out next year. Personally, I want them to draft Josh Rosen, because having Bruce Wayne, the woke edition, would be very hilarious, because all of the things that Tyrod Taylor can't say, Josh could, and Buffalonians couldn't fight it.
Well, I think I always like talking to you about football because you seem to have a bit more realistic view of your team. Like, I'm convinced that my team's going 6-10 this year.
Oh, you guys are going to do it.
6-10. Like, that's our ceiling right now.
Well, here's the thing. What scared me with the Falcons is hearing Matt. I'm like, full disclosure, my best friends will tell you, when he came into the draft, I could not stand Matt Ryan because I felt like he got a lot of credit for being on a bad team, and I hadn't seen that in a couple of years.
I said the exact same thing, by the way.
It's like, oh man, he had no weapons, and Boston College really tried hard. I was like, I've never heard try hard get second overall. Like, that's weird.
Like, he's proved us both very wrong.
Oh yeah, he's been fantastic. But then he had the stuff to say about the guy who got him the lead that they, I'm not going to pull that wound, but he was taking shots at Shanahan, and
It was Shanahan's fault. Oh, I'm not doing this with you right now.
Well, when he said the thing about the plays, it's like, okay, first of all, I love the West Coast offense, so any 30-syllable play call that's in that book, I could probably rattle off in 7 seconds. He's like, when you hear a call and it's like 13 seconds left on the play clock and then it goes out, what am I supposed to do as far as audibles? It's like, well, you could take a little ownership. You could audible to a run. Come on, big fella. You got the big money.
He's not wrong. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this with you. I'm not doing this.
Now,
if the call's coming in late in the play clock and we know it's a heavy verbiage system, there cannot be indecisiveness in the OC booth.
Yes. But this is also the OC that was complicit. This OC also was complicit in having the career ruined of RG3. So believe me, I will not defend Kyle Shanahan. But that was kind of well.
I'm not going to defend him, so here, let me defend him. Anyway, let's move on before I kick you off my podcast. Joe Flacco's got some injury to his back, so of course the shopping list went up for quarterbacks, and of course the landing spot for the Baltimore Ravens, they picked up David Olson. Now, those of you on Pro Football Reference or College Football Reference or local newspapers wondering who David Olson is, glad you asked. Nobody. He played 12 games in a Champions Indoor Football League recently. He played with Kurt Warner's team in the Indoor Football League. Those are different leagues, by the way. And he was a backup at Stanford before he went to Clemson. He never threw a pass at Stanford and completed 1 of 3 at Clemson for 1 yard. And if your question is, why is Colin Kaepernick still unemployed? You're being willfully obtuse.
Yeah, because the argument was, well, he was in Stanford around the same time as Greg Roman, and he knows the offense. You know who also knows Greg Roman's offense and was 1 completion away from a Lombardi?
Colin Kaepernick, final answer.
There you go.
It's ridiculous. It's disgusting. And, yeah. And mark my words, he's not going to get signed this year. He will not play NFL football. Maybe ever again. And hopefully the Players Association will be able to file that lawsuit.
Yep.
Because then we get discovery.
And the one thing we've learned in all of these cases with the NFL is everyone's stupid enough to email them.
Oh, they've had a meeting about this.
Mm-hmm.
You've said some stupid shit in an email, and guess what? If it's a blackballing type of lawsuit, guess whose emails are subject to discovery? All y'all's.
Well, and it's funny because if people go back and think, there's 2 instances, and because I'm a huge NFL draft fan, there's 2 instances that come out. One that's more recent that everyone will recognize right away, La'el Collins. When he had the situation going during the draft and magically all 32 teams decided unanimously that it was time not to draft him. And 2, there was a player whose name escapes me. He's a left tackle. He got kicked out of South Carolina, went to another school, and he basically had they thought he was going to be a 4th rounder, maybe 1st round talent because he was like 6'7", 315, really raw, but he had the tools. Then it came out that he had a sexual assault. Then it came out that the sexual assault was his half-sister and that it wasn't a sexual assault and that it was consensual, but they did not know they were related to each other because that's a weird town they were in. And magically, he was never heard from again in the NFL. He never even got into a camp. And so if you have these examples of the NFL getting together as an organization and saying no thanks, and then you have a man who was 1 completion, as we mentioned, away from the Super Bowl and now can't get a job because he either A, wants too much, B, isn't preparing, or C, wants to do that social justice thing. Yeah, that stinks. That stinks.
Here's a fun game. Look at Dante Culpepper's last stats before he never played in the NFL again. It's really weird. Anyway, yeah, it is what it is. It's what's going to be, and I hope that I hope that Colin's got the stomach for his lawsuit. I've heard reports out there that he wants to just move on with his life, but no, I think this is kind of that place where you put your foot in that ground, and hopefully people around him can talk him into putting a face to the bigotry that expressed itself yet again with the lying ass interpretation of the J.D. Power survey regarding lapsed viewership. So what ESPN was reporting in the headline was that 26% of viewers said that they watched less NFL football because of national anthem protests. Well, they're hoping you don't actually click the link. if you go inside there, you see that I think it was 20 or was it somewhere around 24% of people said they watched less, and of that 24%, inside of that was 27%. So we're talking a quarter of the represented of the 9,200 respondents to the poll, and yeah, I think it's been people they've got the adequate clapback, and I think they've kind of course corrected how they've interpreted it, but it's just another page in the playbook of blame the Negro. This is why things are wrong.
Yeah, and that's why they wanted to throw up that 26% number, because they didn't want to really say 20. They didn't want to say 3%, and then they didn't want to say the actual number, which was like 17. Would have been like 27 or 28 out of the 1,500 respondents. Nor did they do, because my master's is in security and intelligence, so research is the one thing that feeds into my need to know stuff. If you are going to take something like that, you should also have follow-up questions like, how many games have you missed? How many games did you miss specifically for this reason? How many games did you miss for this reason and you were actually able to go? Because if I am on vacation and I don't have access to the NFL network or I don't have access to television, how can I say Colin Kaepernick led to me not seeing an NFL game? So these are things that they didn't want to ask. No. Just like with the CTE study, you mention it, and it's like you have 110 out of 111. It's like, well, when you look at the real numbers, it's really 15% of all NFL players might have it. It's like, well, since you're so willing to dive into numbers on that end, why don't you dive into these numbers with the Kaepernick situation? Whoa, let's not be hasty.
Yeah, and I think the issue on both comes up with the self-selected respondents and, like you said, the limits of the survey. But I think the biggest thing here is how immediately it was spun and how disingenuous the whole thing was, because in the end, actually, guess what? Viewership wasn't actually down.
Right.
That's the craziest part. Viewership went up. But they're willing to tell these lies to make these just ad hoc justifications to why Colin Kaepernick doesn't have a job, was when honestly I think people would just prefer them saying we don't want him and his voice and his opinions near our team.
Yeah.
But
and in February,
the next question is why, and then you're about 3 seconds away from admitting how racist you are.
Yeah, in February, or when the next black trailblazer in civil rights dies, I don't want to hear a peep from any of the 32 teams. I don't want to hear a peep from their owners, their coaches, on how Muhammad Ali influenced their life, or how MLK really said we should do these things, because you are playing that board game I like to call Live the Lie. And you guys are living this lie pretty darn good. You can do all your it's on us campaign stuff. You can do all your public facing things. But when it comes time to actually making a profile and courage moment, you fall short every time.
Yeah, 100%.
I live in Pittsburgh. And one of the main reasons Pittsburgh became the team of the 70s is because one of the Rooney boys decided, hey, how about we find black people? And the rest was history. I always go back to the Bear Bryant quote. I'm not going to be the first coach that has Negroes on my team, but I won't be the third.
It's true. It's 100% true. And they're fine with us carrying a football, but the second you've got an opinion, you become a disruption. Despite zero evidence of disruption, you become a disruption. You got people saying he needs to rehab his image. Rehab what image? Of the man
right.
who wouldn't let injustice go uncalled out? All right, one of our last stories for the day, Jon Urschel. Most of you don't know who he is. I barely know who he is. He's offensive lineman for the Baltimore Ravens. A very good one. 2 days after the New York Times report released, we already referenced regarding the 110 out of 111 brains showing evidence of CTE, Jon Urschel retired. Why Jon Urschel retired? Because Jon Urschel is objectively smarter than all of us. Every one of us.
Yeah.
Me, you, listeners near and far. He is a PhD candidate in mathematics from MIT, which means he knows more about this kind of shit than I know about Batman, which is a crazy amount. His specialties include, and I'm literally reading this in the best way I can, discrete Schrodinger operators, high-dimensional data compression, algebraic multigrid, and Voronoi diagrams. I know what 3 of those words mean. One of his teachers at Penn State said he'd never had a student like him. Not a football student, a student, period. This guy's a mind for math, and he doesn't want to. And in the past, he has been outspoken about the effects of football on the brain. He said in an essay in the Players Tribune in 2015 that he shouldn't play football objectively. He said that this passion for the game overrode the possible risk. There's a rush you get when you go out on the field, lay everything on the line, and physically dominate the player across from you. This is a feeling I'm, for lack of a better word, addicted to, and I'm hard-pressed to find anywhere else. His statement said, never referenced it, so I don't want to put words in his mouth. I'm just putting all the context out there prior to reading the statement. Thank you to everyone for the kind words today. It wasn't an easy decision, but I believe it was the right one for me. There's no big story here, and I appreciate the right to privacy. He goes on to thank people, and he closes with, I'm excited to start working on my doctorate in mathematics in full-time at MIT. I'm looking forward to the chance to take courses that are only offered in the fall semester while spending time with my fiance and preparing myself for the new challenges that will come with fatherhood. We're expecting our first child in December. And I can't say anything more, but the smartest football player decided it wasn't worth it.
Yep.
It's one of those things that I've spoken about it here candidly, but it's in the back of my head a lot. And the question becomes kind of, because I know this is a sport you and I both love, how do we, because what does the future of football look like? Because I think we can agree that while change needs to be made, I'm not confident it will be. And we've seen the drop-off in youth football already. What do you think, just kind of ballpark, what's next? Because, like, this is becoming a crisis point because more and more people are noticing, and you can't plead ignorance. And particularly on the heels of a week where the NFL just announced it was defaulting on a $16 million promise to a concussion research group.
And it's funny to me because in that case with the NFL, the NIH basically said, if you guys aren't going to guarantee you're not going to try to twist our words and not give the facts as we'll walk away from the money. And if anyone knows about the NIH, they should know that there's always money they need to find because a lot of the stuff they do won't be funded by the federal government in normal years, and nowadays is even less likely to have funds. So because of that, that's definitely, oh, pardon me.
Do you need help? Are you? Oh, okay. Yeah, we're good. I thought you were.
Oh boy, hold on a second. I thought my wife was like do the whole quiet introduction to people, but apparently she went with the Paul Heyman microphone method. So yeah, when it comes to concussions, when it comes to all these things, as a coach, as a fan, like for me, calling a wham block, calling a trap, like you're thinking about these things. And you're thinking about the kids. And, you know, I take very seriously the responsibility that folks give me with their children. So I think in the future, football has to change because otherwise, if you try to pretend like you don't see the facts in front of your face, the people who are smart enough to see them, people like us right now talking about this, if I as a coach know that if I do this with a player and they're going to get hurt and I keep doing it, I'm the one that's at fault because that kid's just trusting me with his body or her. We have had a couple of female kickers in my time. So that has to change because otherwise everyone else, you're just that, robber baron that's running the coal mine and you're waiting for the first crop of people to die from emphysema so you can get the next coal miners in.
Right. 100%. Well, man, I really do appreciate you coming on. Rich, tell people where they can find everything you do, man.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Find me on Twitter at Rich_Fann, F-A-N-N. You can find my show on the www.PWTorchLivecast.com website. And if you're interested in the Buffalo Bills, God help you, you can go to www.buffalowins.net or at Buffalo Wins, all one word.
Awesome, man. Thanks for coming on. Again, I'll be on the deep dive next week talking to Ernie Ladd and I'm sure a lot more. This has been Unanimous Decision Podcast. Follow me on Twitter at dpalm66. Follow the show on Twitter at UDPod. You can follow the entire NJ Network at the NJ Network. And that was your show. This is your outro. See you guys next week.